blockchain and IT sphere. So,
okay, so yes. Okay, so my name is Adam Dorfman. I'm from Canada, and I have a startup. We completed angel investment. We're moving towards seed, but it's a blockchain platform business model. So for the last year, I've been in Central Eastern Europe, and I've been talking about the future of jobs. Mostly, I've been talking about how platform business models have changed our mindset, have changed the world, and how blockchain platform business models are going to continue that trend. And so today, we're just going to add EOS to this conversation, because really, EOS is sort of part of what I call like blockchain 2.0. It's similar to some of the things that we talked about, that were talked about earlier by Crypto Lions, were similar, but some of the terminology is a little bit different. And so we probably have good conversations afterwards. Okay, so the first thing to understand is that when you talk about the future of jobs, is that they don't exist yet. So most of the people that are in primary school right now will be doing jobs that don't exist yet, right? So the first thing to understand is that, okay, so the most important skill in the future, a lot of people talk about this, it's actually, in my opinion, is how you deal with emergence, right? Emerging trends, emerging behaviors. And that's why one of the things why I really like EOS is because it's a human-centric blockchain. It deals with that condition that is present in all systems. There is no system that doesn't change, right? It's pretty fundamental. So, as I mentioned before, I have this blockchain. So if you guys want to talk about it, we probably will be using the EOS blockchain. So if you guys want to chat, you're welcome to talk about it anytime. So 5 of the 5 companies, largest companies in the world, are platform business models. The Jack Ma estimates that 90% of all businesses will be on digital platforms. So it's pretty important to understand how platform business models work. And yet, there's only a handful of universities that teach it, right? And so traditional economics is being replaced with platform economics. So what do platforms do? And this is the central theme, and it'll go right into blockchain. The best platforms unlock a totally new behavior. They aggregate all of supply, and they unlock a whole bunch of new supply. They remove these sort of inefficient gatekeepers. So I'll give you guys just a quick example, because we don't have a lot of time, but when you think about Amazon and the digital book publishing industry, a lot of people say, well, they were the first ones to offer this service, and that's why they were really big. That's not why. The reason why they got really big is because they allowed for self-publishing. Instagram allowed for anybody to become a photographer. Facebook to connect with anybody in the world. It allows for a completely new behavior to happen. So, and we'll talk about how blockchain is doing that. So all the interactions, these core interactions, are digitized. So you can see how the interactions, reputation systems are being designed. People rank up, people rank below, right? Based on your reputation and how you're following the intentions of the platform. So it leads to a more efficient marketplace. So the great platforms do 2 things. They reduce barriers and they improve your ability to use it. Everybody wants to progress in life. That's the most, to me, that's one of the most fundamental things. So a great platform business model, a great blockchain platform business model is going to enable people to do something new, and is going to reduce the friction or enable more usage. So when you think about, this is an important concept when you think about emergence and you think about blockchain platform business models. When you look at the horse carriage and the combustible engine, in data science there's a thing called the local maximum. So you can optimize the horse carriage all you want, but it's not going to become an engine, right? And when you think about EOS, it might be the engine, whereas a lot of these other blockchains are the horse carriages, right? For some applications specifically. So there's always a better design out there. Sometimes it's not a question of optimization. Sometimes it's a question of design. So when you think about the biggest, when you look at, generally there's a thing called the innovator's dilemma, meaning that we tend to think that the incumbents, the largest companies, are going to be the ones that innovate. But they're generally not. The research shows that they usually have the technology, they know about it, but they try and sell innovation to a traditional buyer. And generally, like a mature company's objective is to increase the status quo, not completely change the business model. Right? So when you're thinking about innovation, I know some of you I've heard are entrepreneurs here, and blockchain entrepreneurs and developers. You know, don't expect the big guys to do it. Sometimes it takes an entrepreneur to go in and find this higher purpose into the marketplace. So I just suggest to get this book. It's called Platform Scale. It's really good. It helps you to sort of think through like how to design a blockchain platform business model. It's just been updated to include blockchain. So before it was just about platforms. Okay. So quick history, and this is where blockchain platform business models are going to start changing. When I've been traveling around Europe, we see a lot of castles. And it tends to be a touristic thing, people think it is, but a castle is just a business model. It's one of the first business models. So the idea is massive fixed cost. Nobody can get in. Control the supply. Capture scarce resources. Small differentiation. There's not many opportunities to do things. And there's no interaction data. So the supplier and the customer are at huge ends. They're not communicating. Right? And so there's a big gate.
It's your show, does that work?
So information technologies lowered this, has changed things a little bit. It's mean that you don't need as much infrastructure to create businesses. You don't need a mall. You don't need a newspaper, right? All of a sudden, it's created these new, this new competition. So the definition of a platform is an open infrastructure with a governance model that facilitates interactions between interconnected network marketplaces. And that sounds a lot like blockchain to me. Open infrastructure, governance, facilitating interactions, measuring those interactions. It's pretty much blockchain. So what does a platform do that's very different than a normal business? It integrates networks. It's not about competition. You're integrating, you're doing collaborations, and you're cooperating with people. One of the things you've seen, and I think that blockchain is going to change this as well, and EOS specifically is going to have this impact, is that with the internet and the interaction data that's been measured, now all of a sudden behavioral science became way more important. If he clicks on that, what happens? Will he go to the next page? And now psychology and all these other factors are becoming more important because everything's being measured, right? Okay, so EOS is a platform for micro-interactions, free micro-interactions. More things will be measured. Behavioral science will become more important. So every great platform has a core interaction. YouTube, you transfer a video. Facebook, connect with a friend. Airbnb, apartment, a core interaction, something that needs to be repeatable. These platforms, blockchain especially, what they're going to be doing, they're just information factories. And they're managing the information and facilitating interactions. None of these platforms own anything. Airbnb doesn't own any apartments. Uber doesn't own any taxis. They're facilitating interactions. So it's important that even when you're in blockchain, you're not building technology, you're enabling interactions. You know, if you're just building technology on its own, if nobody's using it, it's not going to create a lot of value. We don't have time for
Somebody
this.
goes to a restaurant
No, just, can I skip through?
Greetings, guys.
Yeah, so it was just a restaurant owner. Basically, he says that you have to market to 3 visits. So the best platforms look at interaction failures. They look at that core interaction that I mentioned earlier. So Uber, if the taxi is the transfer of a taxi, if he's late, if the car is dirty, if he gets lost, that's a failed interaction. You have many failed interactions. Will you use Uber? Probably not, right? So the best blockchain platform business models that first focus on the interactions, making sure that you have a great experience. So what happens though is that, as you've seen, a lot of the platforms, they get these great interactions, people have a great experience, but the revenue lags. So they don't charge you at the beginning. Facebook, there was no advertising at the beginning, right? A lot of these platforms, Amazon they were not selling products really at the same level as they are now. So over time, they gather all this data and then they rake in the profits. 3 minutes? Okay, well, it's going to be close. So then they rake in the profits. So look, everything is going to be on a platform. A robot connects you to recipe creators, to homeowners. Interactions are digitized, etc. Let's just go to blockchain. The idea with blockchain, however, is that on a platform business model, the platform controls the data. On a blockchain, the data is shared. So now the demand is much closer to the supply. What blockchain did initially is they opened up to venture capital. 70% of the $9 billion that's been raised in 2017 was in developing regions of the world. Right? So obviously it unlocked a new behavior, a new way to get capital. The 2 things that blockchain is going to do differently is the access and the learning. And that's not available yet, but that's what EOS is solving in the sense of getting your personal data. So there's 3 issues. No microtransactions right now, no easy data extractions, and no valuation method for coins. So EOS allows for free microtransactions, but you won't have any data if it costs you $2 to record every transactions all the time on Ethereum. So you won't have any personal data. EOS solves that problem, enables the free micro-introductions. What that's going to do is all of a sudden people are going to realize, now there's a lot of data that I have on myself on a blockchain. We should develop some data extraction tools. And then next is, when you extract all the data extraction tools, people are going to start thinking about a new valuation method for tokens.
Adam, excuse me, but I have to thank you. And about the questions, you will be able to ask all the questions to Adam. If you want to make it public, let's make it after one small pause, because we have block one Thomas Cox here, and after that we will just make it okay. So please make close to our speaker. Yeah, close, please, guys. And I give microphone to Ramon. Thank you.
I'd like to quickly introduce Thomas Cox, the Vice President of Product for EOS, calling us from the Philadelphia airport. And I don't know how much time before his flight, so maybe we've already sung the praises of EOS. Maybe I could quickly ask, what are the big questions facing EOS?
I usually get asked questions and I do my best to provide answers. I will tell you, I'm amazed at that I'm able to hear, and the enthusiasm, the sophistication of bringing to the platform, and demand very high performance and very rich feature set. We've done our best to And I do believe we have a leading offer today. You've heard a little something about governance. The thing I hope you take away regarding governance is that rather than the code being the law, we have the ability to insert a human layer so that when the code is imperfect, we can't make the you will not have a parity wallet experience where you have to try to explain to the customer that millions of dollars products or services or currency are stuck in a bug somewhere and we recover it. It is profoundly important to us that your needs is an upward platform that suits your needs and serve your customer. I won't be serving funded bikes, half a segment.
Okay, thank you very much.
You will comment because it's like from the moon. Somebody comes from the moon or Mars. So please, actually, I haven't understand almost nothing. So please translate me from English to English.
Just count, you make impression, make some big picture. I just try to count what the real ability of blockchain, EOS blockchain to process transaction. And now I see this real ability really poor. It's poor, it's bad processing power. Because EOS can process like a 3 billion transaction per month. It's only one application, Telegram, on one day make 70 billion message per one day. So EOS not even closer to support as transaction as Telegram. If we talk about microtransaction, messages is just microtransaction. So let me be clear. So you just image draw the image that this blockchain can change everything and can become a microtransaction revolution, but really it's not. So we should find
I would just say that when the internet came out in early 1990s, you could try and sending a video in 1996, it wouldn't be a good experience. And the internet in general, like Gmail, all these things that you take for granted right now as things that are easily done, you couldn't do it when it first started. And it's not the idea that EOS can deliver on it right now. Even in my slide, I said that it's 2-3 years away, two years away from being able to access the data. But the point that I was going to say in the last slide is that you have a closed blockchain. Well, one of the slides I was going to show you is that what I was trying to show is that platform business models, they get you in. Hold on a second. No, wait. It's not a question of can they do it now, it's a question of where is it going, right?
Okay, I understand. That's why I talk about Telegram blockchain, yeah? Because we just not talk about EOS, we just talk about the future, but maybe in future there is no place for EOS. Maybe Telegram blockchain, do you read the Telegram blockchain?
Yeah, the ton.
Maybe they announced, Telegram blockchain announced a million transactions.
I guess the question should be back to you is, do you think there's only room for one blockchain?
I believe in numbers, yeah, if one blockchain can process a lot of transactions, I believe in it. If another blockchain can process transaction, it's no room for them. I think so.
Can I help you?
I have a question for Adam. Okay.
So we have such experience, maybe in Russian a little bit better. У нас есть такой прецедент, когда завалили ноду там, количеством транзакций. Окей. ну, упала штучка, ну, бог с ней. Но, понимаете, проблема в том, что ресурсы, вот, которые используются для, ну, в данном случае, ну, вот то, что вы видели там, когда реал-тайм показывался, эти ресурсы, они очень легко расширяемы. То есть, если нагрузка растет, то увеличить ресурсы вообще не проблема. Это все делается на другом уровне. И в будущем вот как-то расширить ресурсы, ну, грубо говоря, там, если там DOS-атака, да, допустим, ну, бог с ним, упала нода, вторая будет работать, третья будет работать, четвертая и так далее. То есть количество вот этих вот систем, которые, ну, грубо говоря, обслуживают, да, запросы и так далее, оно очень легко расширяемо. И вот эта нагрузка, она будет легко, ну, как бы, это будет очень легко усилить и так далее. То есть там нету, вот, как бы, вот, знаете, там будет миллион транзакций, мы с этим не справиться. Нет, это просто ложится просто на другой уровень, и это все решаемо. Причем решаемо очень быстро.
We have crypto optimists and crypto skeptics here. So one more question. You had a question, yeah?
Can you tell us very quickly about your startups and whether you're moving them to a blockchain or not?
Yeah, no, it's going to be on blockchain. I think one of the main things is that obviously you can't. One of the main things that I believe that blockchain is doing is, you talked about promises, but for me it's more about moving to purpose. And you identify, these blockchains have to identify the purpose at the beginning, and through the shared data layer, these microtransactions, you'd be able to identify this purpose. So one of the examples I give is, you know, if a company starts off, they say we're going to be 100% meat, 100% meat company, and then everybody buys it, it's the best meat in the world. Then the next year they go to 95% meat, and then 90% meat, and then 85% meat, trying to extract as much profit as possible. So I think it's critical in my platform, which is, you know, it's basically the SimCity for decentralized education. So helping the decentralized communities grow so that it creates new pathways for skill development for people in emerging technologies. Yeah. So here you can prove your purpose with the blockchain, share the data,
Okay, so just one motivation from me, just to be clear, you use blockchain to not only to transfer money or value from teacher to student, from student to teacher, but for reputational risk, yes, and for how you will manage learning through this blockchain. Not earning, but learning.
Learning, yes.
Yeah, how will you manage it?
Well, like one of the things, like platform business models create great market efficiency. Blockchain platform business models can create even greater efficiency. For example, you know, the ability for communities to access the data themselves and look for areas in the marketplace that might be underserved or overserved and avoid them. That generates that efficiency that leads to, as long as everybody in the ecosystem of the blockchain platform business model understand the purpose, then everybody kind of follows it, and that's the human-centric idea. And when you think about people who are applying to do blocks for EOS, well, they select them. And the technology, anybody can have the technology to do mining, or that type of mining. And so now you can focus on miners that have purpose.
Okay, thank you. Well done.